You're listening to LSU Daily with Matt Musso, your home for all things LSU sports.
Off and running here on another edition of LSU Daily. Well, it's here. It's Bama week. Apologies for no show on Monday. It was a bit under weather. Got in really, really late and just had to bump it to today. But we're back. We're feeling better. It is Bama week, and there is so much on the line for both teams, LSU and the Crimson Tide, Saturday night in Tiger Stadium. It is a de facto college football playoff elimination game. I know Brian Kelly said his spiel about that on Monday, but the fact of the matter is, it is. One of these teams is going to take not just a third loss, but in Alabama's case, it could be a third conference loss for the Crimson Tide. For LSU, it puts you at 6-2. Very unlikely with a 10-3 record and 6-2 that you would get in. So, yes, it is that. That's just one of the things. You have key injuries on both sides. 2 players out, one on each side that have played big roles for their respective teams. And, oh, by the way, there could be a tropical storm making landfall in Louisiana sometime early Saturday morning, maybe, late Friday night. All of that wrapped into one makes, maybe not your normal Alabama week that we've all kind of come to know around here, but it definitely makes for an interesting one. And that is very run-of-the-mill. Let's get right into it, but first, remind you to subscribe, like, share, all of those things. Follow me on social media, at Musso Matthew on Twitter. You can find me on Facebook, Instagram, at Matthew Musso1. Greatly, greatly appreciated. And let's just not really beat around the bush anymore. Let's kind of dive right into it. Now, I will start with this. Alabama, and we talked about this a little bit before the bye week, before I left on a little mini vacation. Alabama is a good football team. You're never going to hear me say that they're bad. They're good. They beat Georgia, who was number 1 in the country at one point. Now, they had to hang on by the skin of their teeth after blowing a 30-7 lead at home, halftime lead at home, but they got that win. And it continues to look better as Georgia is all the way back to number 2 in the country. They lost to Vanderbilt in Nashville, which at the time was just like, oh my goodness, how could you do that? But now you look up, and this is one of the best seasons in recent memory for Vanderbilt. Now, should Alabama ever lose to Vanderbilt? No, absolutely not. That's still pretty inexcusable. But Vandy's bowl eligible. They just went on the road in Jordan-Hare and got a win. That doesn't even look that bad. And then Tennessee. Tennessee's projected to be in the playoff. You lost on the road in Neyland. Does Alabama have flaws? Sure. Their defense is not what it was under Nick Saban this year. They have plenty of talent, but they've struggled, specifically against the run, and specifically in their losses, and specifically just in conference games in general. You've seen the defense take a bit of a step back. I know they shut out Missouri. That's great. Missouri had a hobbled Brady Cook at quarterback who didn't even finish the game, and they were missing their starting running back. And on top of that, their offense hasn't been good anyway with those guys healthy, and Drew Pine is, well, Drew Pine. So I'm not going to completely take that away from you. It's tough to shut out anybody in major college football and in the SEC, but context matters. All that to say, I think Alabama's a really good team. But like I felt in 2022, they're gettable. 2022 was that first time they were gettable in years. 2019, when you had the best college football team of all time, notwithstanding. And you went into that going, they're gettable. The games have traditionally been close in Tiger Stadium. And LSU's kind of found a way to let them slip away. The last 2 trips for Bama there notwithstanding. And you got them in overtime and hung their second loss on them after, coincidentally, they had lost on the road in Neyland Stadium. And they feel gettable in that same way this season. But all of that is going to come with caveats. But that's just kind of my opening spiel on the game, and we will go through it in some of those caveats in depth throughout the week, so make sure you're here for that. The first thing I want to do is talk about some injury updates for both sides, and then as well a little bit of one thing in the game. So Garrett Dellinger, we know he went down with the ankle sprain against Texas A&M. Tried to get on the stationary bike, came back out of the locker room in pads, but eventually never returned. Paul Mubenga took his place. Brian Kelly on the bye week said it was a high ankle sprain, kind of said, let's hope this is a rest and recovery week for him. And then on Monday was asked if Dellinger required surgery, and here was your answer.
Was Garrett Dellinger's ankle sprain the kind that would require did it require a surgery?
Yeah, he had a tightrope surgery, so he will be out for this weekend's game against Alabama.
So LSU will be without Garrett Dellinger for the Alabama game. We're pretty familiar now with the tightrope procedure. You see it all over football. I think the most famous example, at least in Louisiana sports, would have been Drew Brees having that. And that's kind of when it all really kind of got on our radar here. So he has that. He's out for Bama. Now, Brian Kelly was asked later if Garrett Dellinger could make a return at some point this season for LSU.
Hey, Coach, does Dellinger have a chance to return later in the season, like postseason, or
we're expecting him to have a solid chance for Florida.
So that's really good news. Florida. I mean, y'all, that's a week from Saturday that you could get Garrett Dellinger back. Now, what are you playing for at that point? Well, that'll be determined on Saturday against Alabama. This is significant, and we've talked about it plenty on the show. Garrett Dellinger has been arguably your best offensive lineman this season, and when you lost Tyree Adams, the depth on the offensive line got cloudier. I mean, Dellinger missed the Nichols game, and it was Tyree Adams that slid in there at left guard. Now it's going to be Paul Mubenga, and Mubenga's the one that went in for him at Texas A&M, and he struggled. That was a really tough spot to throw a redshirt freshman into on the road where everything ended up going against you in that second half. The stage can get really, really big for a player like that. Brian Kelly was asked on Monday about the progress and development they've seen Paul Mubenga make, not just in the bye week, but throughout the season.
Paul has steadily worked himself up into what I would call a key backup, right? Somebody that is poised to go in a pivotal time, and you expect him to get the job done. Now he's a starter for us for at least this week, right? And so his development has been one, I think he's made his most progress through execution. He's a quick study. You don't have to tell him twice. He understands our scheme in terms of what we're trying to accomplish. This has been really just about the physical development of Paul, more so than it has been about, his mental abilities relative to picking up what we want to do and how we want to do it.
So a guy who's developed into, a key backup, now he's a starter, and you're going to have to expect him to go out there and play like one. But quick study, have to tell him once. Good learner, understands the scheme. All of those things are positives. The question is, how different is it for Mubenga just being thrown into the game against Texas A&M rather than having a full 2 weeks now to prepare as the starter? Because look, Garrett Dellinger had the surgery. LSU knew. They didn't just announce it until Monday. They've been preparing Paul Mubenga now, at least for a week and some change, and ultimately it'll be 2 weeks before Alabama comes in. You're playing at home. That's way better than playing on the road. But Brian Kelly calls him a quick study. How quick of a study is he? Is 2 weeks enough for him to get ready? The talent's there. Like you heard him say that. He developed into a key backup. The talent's coming along great. And I'll remind you, Paul Mubenga was a guy they were extremely high on in National Signing Day when he signed 2 years ago with LSU. Came out of Buford, which, we all know the powerhouse that Buford High School is in Georgia. They just put guy after guy after guy after guy after guy, not only into college football, but they develop into NFL players as well. So that pedigree is there too. How quickly can the quick study pick it up and be ready to go out there and execute it on a huge stage that is LSU and Alabama? Do I think that, yes, it's good to have it at home? I do. But as we've talked about previously on this show, even the stage at home can swallow you up sometimes, especially in a game of this magnitude with so much on the line. So that is something very, very evident to watch. The other one for LSU is C.J. Daniels. You'll remember Daniels was injured late against Arkansas. His status fluctuated throughout the Texas A&M week, where it was probable, questionable, back to probable, and he gives it a go at A&M. Couldn't finish the game. So he had to finish the game without him. And then he went into the bye week. Here's the status update on C.J. Daniels.
So CJ is much better than he was, obviously, going into the A&M game. And I thought he did a terrific job getting himself ready. I thought our training staff did an incredible job, our doctors, in helping him get ready for a game. Unfortunately, he couldn't answer the bell in the second half, but he's further along. We don't have to put out a report, but I would say he's much better than he was a couple of weeks ago, and the expectation would be that he's going to be able to help us.
Much better along. Perfect. Expect that he'll be able to help them on Saturday. That's huge. C.J. Daniels has been such a safety blanket for Garrett Nussmeier this season. I mean, he's a great possession wide receiver. Guy has shown the ability to make the tough catch. You look at his numbers, and they're not going to jump off the page and flash at you. Only 29 receptions this season, but they've been big receptions. Hasn't even found the end zone, but he's just had... It's hard to count on two hands the amount of receptions that he's had this season that extended drives or bailed Garrett Nussmeier out. Having him ready to go fully for this game against Alabama is going to be massive if you are LSU. On the flip side now for Alabama, they will be without wide receiver and returner Cole Adams. He will miss the rest of the season with what Alabama has described as a lower body injury. The stats for Adams aren't going to jump off the page at you. Only 6 catches for 94 yards. But again, he's been their primary punt returner as well. And it's worth noting also with those 94 yards comes the caveat of he was also injured earlier in the season as well. This injury was suffered 2 weeks ago against Missouri before the open date. It was kind of just like a little bit of a freak thing. He wasn't even the guy catching the ball on the play, but he is out for the year, and that's a blow. That's going to put more on Ryan Williams' plate if you are Alabama. And there's already a lot on his plate, and we're going to talk about that in the matchup for LSU, having to guard him, because that's going to be a really tough assignment for most likely Zy Alexander, but we'll dive into that a little bit more. But that's going to carry more, for Ryan Williams. And then, of course, special teams. You saw how key special teams could be in that LSU-Texas A&M game. Alabama not having their primary punt returner, that's going to be a change. They've got athletes, no question about it, and somebody will slide in there, just fine. But one thing that Cole Adams provided Alabama, as you can imagine him being a returner, was big play ability on the offense, just like Ryan Williams does, and that's why I say now more falls onto Ryan Williams' plate. Okay, one more thing that I do want to get to that I found interesting that Brian Kelly said, and I'm going to tie it back into something that we have talked about all season long, and that is, the extension of the running game. And Brian Kelly was asked specifically about a guy like Aaron Anderson in the quick passing game or in, just screens, things of that nature, as an extension of the running game. And here's his answer.
No doubt, and he's been there for us. I think we have, guys like Mason Taylor and Aaron Anderson, and then, certainly Kyron Lacey's been big for us on third down. We've got to be more consistent across the board and, creating a little bit more uncertainty in terms of what we are doing and making sure that we can, get the ball to the playmakers, but be able to include that in a variety of different ways and include the screen game and misdirection and the running game and create a little bit more uncertainty in terms of what we're doing offensively, and I think you'll see that as we continue to move forward.
If you've been listening all season, I have talked about that all season long, starting back after the USC game. And you saw it in that. Y'all, the one throw in that game that Nuss missed was a little swing pass, like a little bubble out to Aaron Anderson that they scored on earlier in the game. And if he would have caught that one, he would have scored, and LSU probably wins that football game. You need more of that. And it's not just as an extension of the running game. I've been asking to see Aaron Anderson and Xavier Thomas more in the running game. Aaron Anderson doesn't have a carry this season. That's a way to get him the ball and go into space. When you look at a guy like Xavier Thomas has 4 carries this year for 48 yards. He's averaging 12 yards a carry off of 4 carries. I get it, small sample size, but it's 12 yards a carry. When you're hurting to run the football as much as LSU is, give me more Aaron Anderson, give me more Xavier Thomas in space with the ball in their hand and a chance to make a guy miss. That is what I want. That is what we need to see more out of this. That's where you found really your most success. The same thing can go with the little swing passes to Caden Durham still. Y'all, Caden Durham on the season is averaging 14.6 yards per reception. When you look at guys with 10 or more receptions, that's third on your team. Get him the ball in space more. Yes, please. Just look at the slant that Aaron Anderson took 76 or whatever many yards it was to the house against Texas A&M. You've shown it at points, but you haven't shown it enough. And maybe that works in your advantage if you show it plenty in this game. But, man, you have those dynamic playmakers in space, and you aren't able to run the ball consistently. Help use them both in the run game and as an extension of the run game. I mean, it's easier to go back and listen to the show and find weeks that we didn't talk about it than it is that we did, right? I mean, it's just been that frequent. It's easier to count how many times we didn't talk about it than how many times that we did. I've been asking for it since the start of the damn season. And now you go into your biggest game, and the evidence is there that has worked for you in the few times you've used it. Break it out, man. Break tendency. That's what good teams do in big games. And we learned that 2 weeks ago. Your turn. I think that's going to be massive in the football game on Saturday night. All right, that's going to wrap it up, y'all. Appreciate it. We got plenty more to go throughout this week. LSU and Alabama. Men's basketball also opens their season as well. Didn't even really touch on that, but that happens on Wednesday. So maybe we'll get a brief thumbnail there, but it's hard when it's LSU Bama week. So we're going to be very LSU Bama centric, as you might imagine, with so much on the line. Smash the like, get subscribed, share, and follow me on all social media. Be here next time for more on LSU Daily.